please! He has done nothing wrong! Punish me instead!
Silence!
Silence! He slams his royal staff against the polished marble floor. The sound echoes throughout the throne room. Nobles flinch. Servants lower their heads. Even the royal guards dare not breathe. King Alaric points directly at the chained palace guard.
Take this insolent fool to the dungeon! 3 days, no food, only water! Perhaps darkness will teach him the difference between a princess and a common guard!
2 heavily armed guards seize Lucian by the arms. His chains scrape violently across the marble floor.
Take him away.
Princess
I
Serafina
love
breaks
him.
free from the ladies holding her. She throws herself toward him. The entire throne room gasps. Prince Cedric smiles to himself. Lucian slowly turns towards Serafina. Despite the blood on his face, despite the chains around his wrists, he smiles gently.
I choose you even if it cost me my life.
King Alaric's
Drag him
face
away!
hardens. The guards pull Lucian toward the enormous palace doors. Serafina collapses onto the marble floor. Her desperate screams echo through the palace. Lucian! The giant palace doors slam shut. How could a poor palace security guard fall in love with a princess, and why was an entire kingdom determined to destroy him? Before we uncover the shocking truth, welcome to Duke and Duchess. If you're new here, please support the channel by subscribing and tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? Now, let's return to where this unforgettable story truly began.
The kingdom of Kingswell had enjoyed decades of peace under the wise rule of King Roland Valcourt. The people admired their king for his fairness, while the royal family was respected across neighboring kingdoms. Yet behind the towering palace walls, sorrow had settled over the kingdom. King Roland had become critically ill, and despite the efforts of the finest physicians, his condition continued to worsen with each passing day. Inside the royal bedchamber, silence filled the air as the physicians quietly stepped away from the king's bedside. Their expressions revealed what none of them wished to say aloud. Time was running out. That same evening, Queen Evelyn Valcourt summoned her only son, Prince Lucian Valcourt, to the royal library.
My son, your father's strength is fading. There is something we can no longer ignore. You know the ancient law of Kingswell.
Lucian remained silent.
Before you can wear the crown, you must already have a wife beside you. Without a queen, the coronation cannot take place.
Lucian lowered his eyes for a moment before finally speaking.
There is someone I have loved for years.
You never told me.
I wanted to be certain of my own heart before I spoke.
And who is she?
Her name is Rosalie, the daughter of a poor farming family from Briar Village.
You truly love her.
I do. I believe she has a kind heart. I never cared that she was poor.
A crown has never measured a person's worth. Character always has.
The following morning, the royal carriage traveled through the countryside until it reached the small farming village. News spread quickly that the queen herself had arrived. Villagers gathered along the dusty road in disbelief. Rosalie stood frozen outside her family's modest cottage as Queen Evelyn approached with several royal attendants. The queen smiled warmly.
Rosalie, my son, has chosen you. Prince Lucian wishes to make you his wife. For years he has loved you in silence.
It would be the greatest honor of my life.
Then let us prepare for a royal wedding.
Within days, the announcement reached every corner of Kingswell. Church bells rang. Markets buzzed with excitement. People celebrated the future marriage of their beloved prince. But almost as quickly as the celebration began, Rosalie began to change. The humble village girl disappeared. In her place stood a woman intoxicated by the promise of power. She no longer greeted neighbors with kindness. Instead, she demanded they bow before speaking.
Rise and attend me. You will address me as future queen.
Many believed her excitement would pass. Instead, her pride grew stronger each day. One afternoon, Prince Lucian arrived to surprise her during a walk through the village. As he approached, he watched in disbelief as Rosalie slapped one of the palace guards across the face.
I beg your forgiveness, Lady Rosalie.
You addressed me incorrectly. It is future queen.
Rosalie!
My prince.
What happened here?
The guard forgot who I am.
You may return to your duties. You cannot treat people this way.
They must learn respect.
Respect cannot be demanded. It must be earned.
They will learn soon enough.
Lucian hoped it was only excitement. He chose to believe she would change. Days later, he visited her family home again. The yard was untidy. Dirty buckets lay scattered outside. Clothes remained unwashed. Rosalie sat comfortably beneath a tree while her elderly mother and younger sister prepared baskets for the village market. Lucian frowned.
Why aren't you helping them?
Rosalie barely looked up.
There is no reason. My mother and sister can finish everything.
They have worked since sunrise.
When I become queen, servants will do these things. A future queen shouldn't waste time cleaning.
Those words settled heavily in Lucian's heart. For the first time, he questioned whether he truly knew the woman he loved. Yet he still hoped she would come to her senses before the wedding. His final hope disappeared only a few days later. Queen Evelyn had quietly traveled through the village without announcing her arrival. She wished to see Rosalie with her own eyes. As she walked along the marketplace, she witnessed an elderly widow accidentally brush against Rosalie while carrying a basket of vegetables. The old woman immediately apologized.
I'm terribly sorry.
How dare you touch your future queen!
The old widow, Beatrice Rowan, struggled to remain standing as tears filled her eyes. The entire marketplace fell silent. Queen Evelyn stepped forward. Her expression was calm, but her voice carried unmistakable authority.
Enough. A woman who cannot show mercy before wearing the crown will never deserve to wear it.
She removed the royal engagement ring from Rosalie's trembling hand. This engagement is over. Rosalie's confidence vanished instantly. She fell to her knees.
Your Majesty, please forgive me. I'll change, I promise.
A true queen serves her people. She never stands above them.
Without another word, the queen turned and walked away. By sunset, the news had spread throughout the kingdom of Kingswell. The royal engagement had been cancelled. The woman who had once dreamed of becoming queen was now remembered for the pride that cost her everything. The cancellation of the royal engagement left a wound far deeper than Prince Lucian Valcour had expected. He did not mourn the loss of Rosalie herself. What troubled him most was the realization that he had almost placed the future of the kingdom of Kingswell into the hands of someone who viewed the crown as a symbol of power instead of responsibility. For several days, Lucian rarely left his chambers. The palace servants whispered among themselves, wondering how a prince who had once been so hopeful had suddenly become so quiet. Late one evening, Queen Evelyn entered her son's private study. She found Lucian standing beside the window, staring across the palace gardens, where lanterns glowed beneath the night sky. Without turning around, he spoke softly.
I almost made the greatest mistake of my life.
You loved with a sincere heart.
I loved the person I believed she was.
No one can see another person's heart immediately.
I no longer trust appearances.
Queen Evelyn rested a gentle hand on his shoulder.
I've spent my entire life surrounded by people who bow because of my title. They admire the crown before they know the man wearing it.
He paused before continuing.
If I ever marry, I want a woman who chooses me before she ever discovers I'm a prince.
Silence filled the room. Queen Evelyn understood exactly what her son meant.
Outside those palace walls, every family dreamed of becoming connected to the royal house. Every noble hoped their daughter might one day become queen. Even ordinary villagers imagined how different their lives would become if royalty entered their homes.
Finding genuine love while carrying a crown seemed almost impossible.
There may still be a way. What if no one knew who you truly are?
The prince remained silent. The idea settled into his thoughts. The following morning, the queen visited King Roland's chambers. Although the king had become weak, his mind remained clear. After listening to his son's plan, the old king closed his eyes for several moments. Finally, he nodded.
If my son wishes to discover who deserves to stand beside him, then let him go. But remind him that time is no longer our friend.
I understand.
Queen Evelyn understood the hidden meaning behind those words. King Roland knew his life was nearing an end. Lucian could not remain away forever. Within 2 days, quiet preparations were made. No royal announcement was issued. No farewell ceremony took place. Before sunrise, Lucian removed the embroidered jackets that marked him as heir to the throne. He took off the jeweled rings that had belonged to generations of Kingswell rulers. His ceremonial sword remained locked inside the palace armory. For the first time since childhood, he looked like an ordinary young man. Queen Evelyn embraced her son tightly before his departure.
Promise me one thing.
I will.
When you choose your future queen, choose the woman whose heart remains the same whether she stands inside a palace or a cottage.
I promise.
With only a small leather bag, a few changes of simple clothing, several gold coins, and his trusted horse, the future prince quietly rode away from the kingdom of Kingswell. No soldiers followed him, no royal banners marked his journey. For the first time in 26 years, Prince Lucian Valcour simply became Lucian. Several days later, he crossed the border into the neighboring kingdom of Everley. The bustling capital looked very different from Kingswell. Merchants filled the streets, craftsmen displayed their work, children played freely through the crowded marketplace. Nobody recognized the young traveler passing among them. For Lucian, the feeling was strangely refreshing. He rented a small room above a baker's shop and began searching for honest work. After several unsuccessful attempts, he finally learned that Everley's royal palace needed additional security guards. The captain questioned him about riding, discipline, and swordsmanship. Lucian answered carefully, never revealing the years of military training he had received as a prince. By sunset, he was handed a plain guard's uniform. His duties began the following morning. Life changed immediately. Instead of servants preparing breakfast, he stood in line with dozens of palace employees. Instead of dining beneath crystal chandeliers, he shared simple meals with stable workers, gardeners, and gatekeepers. Nobody bowed when he entered a room. Nobody rushed to fulfill his requests. Some officers barely noticed he existed. For the first time in his life, Lucian experienced the world exactly as ordinary people did. He quickly discovered that kindness often depended on status. Powerful nobles ignored servants completely. Some palace officials spoke harshly to workers while smiling politely at members of the royal family. Every day taught him something he had never learned inside his own palace. Weeks passed peacefully. One afternoon, while delivering security reports to a noble estate connected to the palace, Lucian met Vivian Norwood. She greeted him warmly at the entrance instead of calling for a servant.
You must have traveled a long way. You look exhausted.
Before Lucian could answer,
I'll be
she
just a
disappeared
moment.
briefly into the house. Moments later, she returned carrying a glass of cool lemonade and freshly baked bread. You should eat before riding back. Lucian thanked her, surprised by such simple generosity.
This is most generous.
During their conversation, he learned that Vivian's late father had served as the kingdom's respected librarian for many years before his passing. She now lived with her widowed mother, Agnes Norwood, and her older brother Gabriel Norwood, who managed the family's estate. Over the following weeks, Lucian found himself returning whenever palace duties brought him nearby. Sometimes they walked through the gardens. Other times they spoke beneath the old oak tree overlooking the countryside. Vivian never asked whether he owned land. She never questioned his income. She simply enjoyed his company. For the first time since leaving Kingswell, hope quietly returned to Lucian's heart. Perhaps his journey had finally led him to the woman he had been searching for all along. Nearly 2 months passed after Lucian began serving as a palace security guard in the kingdom of Everley. His new life had become familiar. Every morning he reported for duty before sunrise, patrolled the palace grounds, and carried out every assignment without complaint. His fellow guards respected him for his honesty, while the palace officials appreciated his discipline. Although he lived as an ordinary man, he had slowly found peace. Whenever his duties allowed, he visited the Norwood estate. Vivienne welcomed him warmly each time. They spent quiet afternoons walking through the gardens, reading books from her late father's collection, or simply talking beneath the shade of ancient oak trees. Lucian admired the kindness she showed everyone around her. For the first time since leaving Kingswell, he truly believed his journey had not been in vain. Unknown to him, events back home were becoming increasingly desperate. King Roland Valcourt's illness had worsened dramatically. The royal physicians informed Queen Eveline that the king's condition could change at any moment. Unable to wait any longer, the queen called for Princess Celeste Valcourt.
I need you to find your brother. You must not travel as royalty. If anyone discovers his identity, everything he has sacrificed will be meaningless.
I understand.
The following morning, she left the kingdom of Kingswell, wearing the simple clothing of an ordinary traveler. Without royal guards or servants accompanying her, she crossed the border into Everley and quietly began searching for her brother. Several days later, she finally found Lucian finishing his afternoon patrol near the palace gardens. The moment he recognized his sister, a smile spread across his face. "Celeste!" She hurried toward him. "You've grown thinner." Lucian laughed softly. "And you've become very good at disguises." They embraced warmly after months apart. For a few moments, they simply enjoyed seeing one another again. Then, Celeste's expression became serious.
Father is much worse.
Worse?
The physicians don't know how much longer he has.
Silence settled between them. Lucian looked toward the palace before speaking quietly.
I know my time here is almost over.
Have you found what you came searching for?
I believe I have. There is a woman. I know I haven't told her the truth yet, but I truly believe she could become my wife.
Mother will be so happy.
I only need a little more time. I'll return home soon.
Your search is almost complete.
My search is almost complete.
Neither of them noticed that someone else had entered the nearby garden. Vivienne had come hoping to surprise Lucian after hearing he was nearby. As she approached the stone pathway, she stopped behind a flowering hedge. She heard Lucian's voice. "There is a woman." Then she saw him embrace another young woman. The two smiled warmly at one another. Vivienne's heart sank. She knew nothing about Celeste. To her, the scene spoke for itself. Tears immediately filled her eyes. "So," she whispered to herself, "I was never the only one." Unable to bear another moment, she turned and hurried away. A few seconds later, Lucian noticed movement beyond the hedge. He caught sight of Vivienne disappearing through the garden gate. "Vivienne!" He immediately ran after her. She never looked back. By the time he reached the street, she had already disappeared into the busy marketplace. That evening, Lucian went directly to the Norwood estate. Vivienne answered the door. Her eyes were red from crying.
Please, just let me explain.
I don't want an explanation.
You saw something you misunderstood.
I saw enough. I saw enough. I saw the woman you were embracing.
She isn't who you think she is.
You spoke about marrying someone. I heard every word.
You don't understand.
Before Lucian could continue, heavy footsteps echoed from inside the house. Gabriel Norwood appeared in the doorway. His expression hardened the moment he saw Lucian. "My sister has cried enough because of you." Lucian remained calm. "I've done nothing to hurt her." Gabriel stepped closer. "Leave. Please, I only need a few minutes. You've had enough of our family's time." Lucian tried once more. If Vivian would only listen. Gabriel firmly pushed the gate closed. "My sister deserves an honest man. Don't come back." The wooden gate shut between them. Lucian stood motionless. He knew forcing the matter would only make things worse. Over the following week, he sent letters explaining everything. Every letter was returned unopened. He waited outside the estate several times, hoping Vivian might agree to speak with him. She never appeared. The misunderstanding had become a wall neither of them could cross. Eventually, Princess Celeste prepared to return to Kingswell. Before leaving, she found Lucian near the palace stables. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "This wasn't your fault." Lucian forced a faint smile. Perhaps it simply wasn't meant to be. Celeste embraced Lucian once more. "Come home soon. Mother needs you." "I will." After watching his sister ride away, Lucian remained standing alone for a long time. Losing Vivian hurt deeply, yet something inside him refused to surrender. If fate had closed one door, perhaps another still waited ahead. Without realizing it, Lucian was only days away from meeting the woman who would change the course of his life forever.
Several weeks had passed since Lucian's heartbreaking separation from Vivian Norwood. Although the pain still lingered, he refused to allow disappointment to interfere with his responsibilities. Every morning before sunrise, he reported to the palace courtyard, completed his assignments without complaint, and earned the respect of the other guards through hard work rather than rank. One chilly morning, unexpected news spread quickly through the palace. Captain Tristan Hawke, the commander of the palace guards, had fallen seriously ill after suffering a severe fever during the night. His absence created an immediate problem. That same day, Princess Seraphina Everly was scheduled to visit several villages and inspect schools, bridges, and farming projects funded by the royal treasury. The journey could not be postponed. The captain's deputy quickly gathered the available guards. "I need one volunteer to replace Captain Hawke," he announced. The room fell silent. Escorting the princess was considered one of the most demanding assignments in the kingdom. Lucian calmly stepped forward. "I'll do it." The deputy studied him for a moment before nodding. "Be ready within the hour." Not long afterward, the royal carriage rolled through the palace gates. Lucian mounted his horse beside the carriage, expecting nothing more than another routine assignment. Like many people, he assumed the princess would behave like countless royals he had seen from a distance, proud, demanding, and surrounded by endless luxury. The procession reached the first village shortly before noon. As soon as the carriage stopped, palace servants rushed forward to assist the princess. Before anyone could offer a hand, Seraphina stepped down by herself. She greeted the village elders with a warm smile, instead of waiting for them to bow. "Good morning," she said kindly. "I hope your families are well." Lucian watched quietly. The visit continued through the marketplace. While royal officials inspected accounts and discussed taxes, Seraphina wandered among the ordinary villagers. Suddenly,
Please allow
an
me.
elderly man stumbled beneath the weight of 2 heavy sacks of grain. Without hesitation, Seraphina hurried toward him.
Please allow me.
Your Highness, I couldn't possibly allow that.
Then think of me simply as someone helping a neighbor.
Lucian stared in silence. No servant had instructed her. No one expected such behavior. She simply did what she believed was right. Later that afternoon, the royal procession stopped outside a small cottage where several children stood waiting quietly. Their clothes were worn, and their faces showed signs of hunger.
Seraphina immediately noticed them. "What have they eaten today?" she asked one of the village women. The answer made her expression change. "Only bread since yesterday." Without another word, she instructed the palace steward to distribute food from the royal carriage: fresh bread, cheese, fruit, warm soup. The children smiled with excitement as they received their meals. One little girl hugged Seraphina tightly. Instead of stepping away, the princess embraced the child with equal affection. Lucian had never seen a royal behave that way. The inspection continued into the afternoon. Wherever Seraphina walked, she greeted craftsmen, farmers, teachers, and laborers with genuine respect. She remembered names. She asked about families. She listened far more than she spoke. No conversation seemed beneath her attention. As the sun slowly lowered across the countryside, another unexpected moment unfolded. Near the entrance of a small village church, an elderly widow struggled to carry a basket overflowing with vegetables. The basket slipped from her hands. Potatoes rolled across the road. Several carrots landed in the dust. Before anyone else reacted, Seraphina hurried forward. She knelt on the ground without concern for her elegant dress and began gathering every vegetable herself. The old woman looked embarrassed.
Oh, Your Highness, please don't dirty your hands because of me.
Seraphina smiled warmly.
Hands were made to help.
Lucian immediately recognized the woman. It was Beatrice Rowan, the same widow whose mistreatment had ended Rosalie's engagement months earlier. As Seraphina carefully returned the vegetables to the basket, Beatrice's eyes filled with tears.
May heaven bless you, Princess. I've already been blessed.
I still have the opportunity to serve. Those simple words remained in Lucian's thoughts long after they left the village. For the first time since leaving Kingswell, he found himself comparing two women. Rosalie demanded respect. Seraphina earned it naturally. Rosalie believed the crown placed her above others. Seraphina believed it placed her among them. From that day forward, Lucian looked forward to every assignment involving the princess. Sometimes he accompanied her to schools. Other times they visited hospitals, farms, or construction projects. During the long journeys between villages, they slowly began speaking to one another. Seraphina asked about his family. Lucian carefully avoided revealing his true identity, but answered honestly about everything else. She admired his quiet wisdom. He admired her compassion. Days became weeks. Friendship gradually replaced formality. They laughed together during long rides through the countryside, shared conversations beneath old oak trees while officials completed inspections. Sometimes they simply enjoyed the peaceful silence without needing words. Neither realized exactly when friendship became something deeper, yet both quietly recognized the change. Yet neither dared acknowledge it. Seraphina was the beloved Princess of Everley. Lucian was, in everyone's eyes, nothing more than an ordinary palace security guard. Between them stood a distance that neither believed love alone could overcome.
While Lucian and Princess Seraphina found happiness in one another's company, a storm was quietly gathering within the kingdom of Everley. For months, King Alaric Everley had struggled to keep his kingdom financially stable. Poor harvests, declining trade, and costly public projects had drained the royal treasury. The ministers met almost daily, presenting reports that grew more alarming with each passing week. One evening, the king's most trusted adviser placed a thick ledger before him. "If nothing changes before winter, Your Majesty, the kingdom will face debts we cannot repay." King Alaric closed the book slowly. There must be another solution. The adviser hesitated.
There is
one.
The alliance
The king
with
already knew
Thornfield?
what was coming. The alliance with Thornfield? The adviser nodded.
Prince Cedric has once again requested Princess Seraphina's hand in marriage. The union would secure trade routes, military protection, and enough financial support to restore the treasury.
King Alaric leaned back heavily in his chair. He loved his daughter deeply, yet as king, he also carried the weight of an entire nation. After a long silence, he made the decision he had avoided for months. Preparations for the royal engagement would begin. A formal invitation was sent to Prince Cedric Thornfield. Within days, Cedric arrived at the palace with a grand procession of noblemen, soldiers, expensive gifts, and promises of prosperity. To the royal court, he appeared confident, generous, and charming. Only a few people knew how ambitious he really was. During his first dinner with the royal family, Cedric noticed something unusual. The princess answered his questions politely, but her smile never reached her eyes. Whenever he attempted conversation, she quickly changed the subject. When dinner ended, she excused herself at the earliest opportunity. Cedric watched her leave. His expression hardened. The following morning, he summoned 2 trusted men who had traveled with him. "I want to know everything she does." One of the men frowned. "Everything, Your Highness?" Cedric nodded. "Every place she visits, every person she speaks to, and especially," he paused, "if another man has captured her attention." The spies quietly began their work. For several days they followed the princess from a distance. What they discovered surprised them. There were no secret meetings with noblemen, no hidden letters, no mysterious visitors. Instead, they repeatedly saw the princess spending time with an ordinary palace security guard. Sometimes during village inspections, sometimes while returning from official duties, sometimes simply walking through the palace gardens after sunset. The guard was the same man, Lucian. When Cedric received the report, his face darkened with anger. "A guard?" He laughed bitterly. "My rival is a poor palace guard?" One of the spies nodded. They appeared deeply attached to one another. Cedric stood and walked toward the window. For several moments he remained silent. Finally, a slow smile appeared across his face. "No, I won't dirty my hands by dealing with him." His advisor looked confused. "What do you intend to do?" Cedric turned around. "I don't need to destroy the guard. I only need the king to destroy him." Instead of confronting Lucian himself, Cedric quietly began spreading carefully crafted whispers throughout the palace. The rumors moved from servants to guards, from guards to ministers, until finally they reached the ears of King Alaric. The king's face turned pale with disbelief. "A palace guard? My daughter? Impossible!" He immediately ordered an investigation. Within hours, several servants confirmed seeing the princess and Lucian on numerous occasions. None of the stories suggested anything improper, but together they painted one undeniable truth. The princess had fallen in love, and the man she loved was an ordinary palace guard. King Alaric's patience finally broke. "Bring him before me." The royal throne room filled quickly. Ministers, generals, noble families, palace officials. Even Prince Cedric stood quietly among them, pretending to know nothing. Moments later, Lucian entered the armed escort. He remained calm as he stood before the throne. King Alaric stared at him with cold disappointment.
What is your name?
Lucian, Your Majesty.
I have heard disturbing rumors. They say you have developed feelings for my daughter.
Lucian remained silent. The king continued.
I will ask you only once. Are these rumors true? They are.
A wave of whisper spread through the court. The king tightened his grip on the arms of his throne. Lucian continued speaking.
I love Princess Serafina, and if heaven ever granted me such an honor, I would gladly make her my wife.
Words struck the throne room like thunder. Prince Cedric smiled quietly. The king rose to his feet in fury.
How dare you! You are nothing more than a palace guard!
I did not choose who I would love. The king's anger exploded.
Guards! Throw him into the underground prison. 3 days, no food, only water.
Perhaps darkness will teach him the difference between a princess and a common man.
The guard seized Lucian and led him away. Before the massive doors closed behind him, another voice suddenly echoed through the palace. "Father!" Princess Seraphina rushed into the throne room. Tears streamed down her face. She threw herself before the throne. "Please, he has done nothing wrong. Punish me instead." King Alaric's expression remained unchanged. "You will remain to your chambers immediately." "I won't. I love him."
I won't.
The confession stunned everyone present.
love him.
The king's face hardened. "You will remain confined to your room until you accept Prince Cedric's proposal." The chamber doors closed behind her. From that day forward, Seraphina refused every meal placed before her. She spent her days praying, crying, and pleading for Lucian's freedom. With each passing day, she grew weaker. Yet even as hope slowly slipped away, she refused to stop loving the man the entire kingdom believed was nothing more than an ordinary palace guard.
3 long days passed inside the cold underground dungeon beneath the royal palace of Everley. No sunlight reached the stone walls. No voices echoed through the narrow corridors, except the footsteps of the guards delivering a small jug of water each morning. Prince Lucian Valcourt sat quietly on the rough floor, his hands bruised from the heavy iron chains that had bound him on the first day of his imprisonment. His clothes were stained with dust, and exhaustion was beginning to show across his face. Yet despite everything he had endured, he never regretted speaking the truth. He had confessed his love before an entire royal court, and if given another chance, he knew he would do exactly the same. Far above the dungeon, another battle was unfolding. Princess Seraphina Everley remained locked inside her chambers. Every tray of food delivered to her room returned untouched. Her ladies-in-waiting pleaded with her to eat. She refused. The palace physician warned King Alaric that his daughter was growing dangerously weak. "If this continues," he said quietly, "Her Highness may become seriously ill." King Alaric dismissed everyone from the room. When he entered Seraphina's chamber, he hardly recognized his daughter. Only a few days earlier, she had been full of warmth and laughter. Now her face had become pale. Dark circles surrounded her tired eyes. She slowly rose from her chair. "Father," King Alaric sighed deeply, "you are making this far more difficult than it needs to be." Tears filled Seraphina's eyes. "The only difficult thing is watching an innocent man suffer." He knew his place. "No, he only loved me." The king turned away. "You are a princess, and he is a guard." Seraphina stepped closer. "I never cared about his title." King Alaric closed his eyes. "You must." Silence filled the room. Finally, Seraphina spoke again. "If I agree to marry Prince Cedric," her voice trembled, "will Lucian be set free?" The king remained silent for several moments before answering. "I will spare his life. He will be released, but he will leave Everley forever." Seraphina's heart shattered. She knew exactly what those words meant. If Lucian left, she might never see him again. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she lowered her head. After a painfully long silence, she whispered the words that broke her own heart. "I accept." King Alaric looked at his daughter. He saw no joy, no excitement, only sacrifice. Without another word, he quietly left the chamber. An hour later, the heavy prison doors slowly opened. Lucian looked toward the light. 2 guards entered his cell. "The king has granted your release." Lucian stood slowly. "My release?" One of the guards nodded. "You are to leave the kingdom of Everley immediately. You are never to return." Lucian frowned. What changed the king's mind? Neither guard answered. They escorted him through the palace grounds without another word. As Lucian crossed the outer gates, he turned back one final time. His eyes searched the palace windows. He hoped to see Seraphina. She never appeared. Unknown to him, she stood hidden behind a curtain in her chamber, watching silently as the man she loved disappeared beyond the palace walls.
She pressed her trembling hand against the window. "I'm sorry." The words escaped as little more than a whisper. Lucian lowered his head. In his heart, only one explanation seemed possible. She had chosen another future. Slowly, he mounted his horse and began riding away from Everley. Each mile carried him farther from the woman he loved. Yet the greatest sorrow of all was not knowing the truth. He believed Seraphina had accepted Prince Cedric because she no longer loved him. He never imagined she had sacrificed everything to save his life. Days passed as Lucian crossed forests, rivers, and mountain roads on his journey back towards Kingswell. Along the way, he noticed royal messengers questioning travelers at nearly every crossroads. One rider suddenly recognized him. "Prince Lucian!" The messenger quickly dismounted. "We've been searching everywhere." Lucian's expression changed immediately. "What has happened?" The messenger struggled to speak. "Your Highness, His Majesty, King Roland Valcourt has passed away." The world seemed to stop. Lucian stood frozen beside his horse. His father's final moments had come and gone without him. For several seconds he could not find the strength to answer. Then he quietly mounted his horse once more. This time he rode faster than ever before. When the towers of Kingswell finally appeared on the horizon, black mourning banners fluttered above the palace walls. The gates opened immediately. Servants rushed forward. Queen Eveline hurried down the palace steps. The moment she saw her son, tears filled her eyes. Lucian's once pristine appearance had vanished. His face was thinner, his clothes were worn, his hands still carried marks left by iron chains. Without saying a word, the queen embraced him tightly. "My son." Lucian could no longer hide his grief. "I wasn't there. I couldn't say goodbye." Queen Eveline gently held his face. "Your father knew how much you loved him. He never doubted you." Later that evening, mother and son sat together inside the royal library. For hours, Lucian told her everything. He spoke about serving as an ordinary guard, meeting Vivian, losing her, meeting Princess Seraphina, falling in love, his imprisonment, his banishment. When he finished, silence filled the room. Finally, he looked toward the fire burning inside the hearth. "I lost her, but I found the woman who deserves to stand beside the throne." Queen Eveline saw complete sincerity in her son's eyes. Before she could answer, the Lord Chancellor entered the library, carrying an ancient leather-bound book containing the laws of succession. He bowed respectfully. "Your Highness, the funeral of King Roland will be held in 3 days. There is also another matter." Lucian looked at him. "The laws of Kingswell remain unchanged. You cannot be crowned king until you are a married man." The weight of the crown had never felt heavier.
The death of King Roland Valcourt cast a shadow over the entire kingdom of Kingswell. Church bells rang slowly from sunrise until dusk. Black banners hung from castle walls, marketplaces closed their doors, and thousands of citizens dressed in mourning gathered outside the royal palace to pay their final respects to the king who had ruled them with wisdom for more than 30 decades. Inside the palace, Prince Lucian Valcourt buried himself in duty. Every hour was filled with preparations for his father's state funeral. He personally reviewed the guest list, approved the ceremonial procession, and ensured that every tradition honoring the late king would be respected. Although grief weighed heavily on his heart, Lucian carried himself with quiet dignity. His father's final responsibility had now become his own. Meanwhile, across the border in the kingdom of Everley, Princess Seraphina's life had become almost unbearable. Since Lucian's banishment, she had withdrawn from everyone around her. She rarely left her chambers. The piano she once played every evening remained untouched. The palace gardens she had loved to visit no longer brought her comfort. Most days, she simply sat beside the window, staring toward the distant hills where Lucian had disappeared weeks earlier. Her ladies-in-waiting tried to encourage her. She answered only with silence. Meals continued arriving at her door. Most returned untouched. Even when she forced herself to eat, it was only enough to satisfy those caring for her.
King Alaric watched his daughter fading before his eyes. Every passing day deepened the guilt he carried. He had saved his kingdom's finances, but he feared he had destroyed his daughter's happiness forever. Unlike Seraphina, Prince Cedric Thornfield remained focused on only one objective. He wanted the engagement completed as quickly as possible. To him, marriage was nothing more than a political victory. He instructed his advisors to begin selecting musicians, designing decorations, and sending invitations to noble families throughout neighboring kingdoms. Whenever he attempted to speak with Seraphina, she offered nothing beyond polite silence. Her heart was somewhere far beyond the palace walls. One morning, while final preparations for the engagement celebration were underway, a royal messenger arrived from the kingdom of Kingswell, carrying a sealed invitation. The letter was presented directly to King Alaric. He carefully broke the wax seal and began reading. The room became quiet. Finally, he looked toward his advisors. King Roland Valcourt has passed away. Everyone lowered their heads respectfully. The kingdom of Kingswell requests the presence of neighboring royal families at the state funeral. One minister spoke first. "We cannot refuse such an invitation." King Alaric nodded. It would dishonor both kingdoms. Preparations for the journey began immediately. Several days later, a magnificent royal procession crossed the border into Kingswell. King Alaric traveled with Princess Seraphina, Prince Cedric Thornfield, senior ministers, and dozens of royal guards. As their carriages approached the capital, they noticed thousands of mourners lining the streets. The entire kingdom had gathered to honor its late ruler. The atmosphere was filled with dignity and sorrow. When they entered the grand royal cathedral, Seraphina quietly lowered her eyes in respect. She had no desire to attend such a ceremony. Her thoughts remained fixed on only one person. She silently wondered where Lucian might be, whether he had reached home safely, whether he still hated her for choosing another man. The cathedral gradually filled with nobles, ambassadors, military commanders, and members of royal families from distant lands. Soft organ music echoed through the enormous hall. Then, the royal herald stepped forward. His powerful voice carried across the cathedral. Presenting His Royal Highness, Prince Lucian Valcourt, future king of the Kingdom of Kingswell. Every eye turned toward the great entrance. The cathedral doors slowly opened. Seraphina looked up. Her breathing stopped. Walking through the aisle, dressed in magnificent black ceremonial robes trimmed with silver embroidery, wearing the royal sash of the House of Valcourt, followed by members of the royal guard, was the man she had fallen in love with, the poor palace security guard, Lucian. For several long seconds, she could not move. Tears immediately filled her eyes. King Alaric stared in complete disbelief. His lips parted, but no words came. Prince Cedric's face lost all color. The confident smile that had followed him for weeks disappeared instantly. His mind raced through every moment, the rumors, the courtroom, the dungeon, the banishment. He had mocked, manipulated, and celebrated the downfall of the future king of another kingdom. The realization struck him like a blow. His ambition had blinded him completely. Lucian continued walking calmly toward the front of the cathedral. His expression remained solemn as he approached his father's casket. He never looked toward the visiting delegation. His entire focus remained on honoring the man who had raised him. The funeral ceremony passed in respectful silence. Only after the final prayer ended did King Alaric slowly gather enough courage to approach him. For the first time in many years, a king approached another man, not with authority, but with humility. Lucian turned as he heard approaching footsteps. King Alaric stopped before him. His eyes reflected deep regret. "I owe you an apology." Lucian listened quietly. "I judged you by the clothes you wore. I believed birth determined a person's worth. I never stopped to see your character." The king's voice grew heavier. "I imprisoned an honorable man. I separated my own daughter from the man she loved, and I did so without ever learning who you truly were." He lowered his head. "I ask for your forgiveness." The surrounding nobles watched in stunned silence. Few had ever witnessed one king humble himself before another. Lucian looked at the grieving father before him. He understood that regret had already become its own punishment. The moment that had begun with pride had finally become a lesson in humility.
Silence settled over the royal cathedral after King Alaric Everley lowered his head and asked Prince Lucian Valcourt for forgiveness. The nobles standing nearby exchanged astonished glances. Never in living memory had they witnessed one monarch humble himself before the future ruler of another kingdom. Lucian remained quiet for several moments. He looked at the man standing before him. He saw no arrogance, no royal pride, only a father burdened with regret. Finally, Lucian stepped forward. He gently placed a hand on King Alaric's shoulder. "Your Majesty," he said calmly, "every man makes mistakes. What defines us is whether we are willing to admit them." King Alaric slowly raised his head. Lucian continued, "When I entered your kingdom, I wore the clothes of a poor guard. You judged me by what the world could see. But the greatest measure of any man has never been his title. It has always been his character." The king listened in silence. Lucian offered him a respectful nod. "I hold no hatred toward you. I forgive you." A wave of relief passed across King Alaric's face. For the first time in many weeks, the weight he had carried began to lift. Lucian then turned toward Princess Seraphina. She stood only a few steps away, tears already streaming down her cheeks. Neither of them spoke at first. The cathedral seemed to disappear around them. Only their eyes remained fixed on one another. Lucian slowly walked toward her. "I've spent every day wondering why you chose another man." Seraphina lowered her head. "I never chose him." Her voice trembled. "I chose your life." Lucian frowned slightly. King Alaric quietly stepped forward. "There is something you deserve to know." He took a slow breath. "The day I released you from prison, it wasn't because my heart had changed." Lucian listened carefully. "Seraphina came to me. She begged for your freedom. I refused." The king's voice grew heavier. "She offered me the only thing she believed could save you." Lucian turned back toward Seraphina. She could no longer hold back her tears. "I agreed to marry Prince Cedric, not because I loved him, but because I couldn't bear the thought of losing you. You left believing I had abandoned you. The truth is, I was trying to save your life." Lucian felt his heart tighten. Every painful memory from the journey home suddenly made sense. She had never betrayed him. She had sacrificed everything for him. Slowly he reached for her hands. "When I believed I was nothing more than an ordinary palace guard, you loved me. You never asked whether I owned land. You never cared about wealth. You never asked whether I carried a title." He smiled through his own tears. "And when my life depended on your decision, you gave up your own happiness. There is no greater proof of love than that." The cathedral remained perfectly still. Then, to everyone's surprise, Lucian slowly lowered himself onto one knee. A royal attendant stepped forward and placed a small velvet box into his hand. Lucian opened it. Inside rested a magnificent diamond engagement ring that had belonged to generations of queens of Kingswell. Looking directly into Seraphina's eyes, he spoke with complete sincerity. "Princess Seraphina Everley, you loved me when you believed I had nothing. You stood beside me when the entire world stood against me. You have already proven that your heart is worthy of every crown this world could offer." He gently held out the ring. "Will you do me the greatest honor of becoming my wife and the future queen of Kingswell?" Seraphina covered her mouth as tears flowed freely down her face. She looked toward her father. King Alaric smiled and gave a gentle nod. Then she looked back to Lucian. With trembling hands, she reached for him. "Yes, I will." The cathedral erupted into joyous applause. Many guests wiped tears from their eyes. Even seasoned generals smiled openly. Lucian placed the ring upon her finger before rising to embrace her. Not far away, Prince Cedric Thornfield stood motionless. Everything he had planned had collapsed before his eyes. The woman he had tried to win through politics had freely chosen another man. For the first time, he understood that love could never be forced.
Several weeks later, both kingdoms gathered once again, this time not for mourning, but for celebration. The streets of Kingswell were decorated with thousands of white flowers and royal banners. Church bells rang across the capital as guests arrived from distant kingdoms. Citizens lined every street, hoping to witness the royal wedding. Inside the grand cathedral, Lucian and Seraphina exchanged their vows before family, friends, and representatives from across the realm. When the ceremony ended, joyous cheers echoed through the city as the newly married couple stepped onto the palace balcony together. The following morning, another historic ceremony took place. Before the people of Kingswell, Lucian was officially crowned king. Beside him stood Queen Seraphina, wearing the royal crown with quiet grace rather than pride. As the applause faded, the newly crowned king stepped forward to address his people for the first time. My father taught me that a ruler exists to serve. My own journey has taught me something equally important. He looked across the enormous crowd gathered before the palace. From this day forward, no man or woman in the kingdom of Kingswell shall ever be judged by wealth, birth, or title. A person's character will always carry greater value than the family into which they were born. The greatest crown any person can wear is a humble heart. Thunderous applause filled the palace square. King Alaric stood proudly beside Queen Eveline, watching the future of both kingdoms begin with hope instead of fear. Rosalie had lost a crown because pride ruled her heart. Seraphina earned one because compassion guided every step she took. And so the poor palace guard, who had once walked unnoticed through the halls of another kingdom, became a beloved king, ruling beside the woman who loved him long before she ever knew his true name.